universe works, right? Because a lot of the times when you're a creator and you're trying to be able to be somewhat independent and try to get through life and all of this shit, and like the universe sometimes sends you like these little bits of crumbles. Like this situation with you and like the Brewers. Like, I don't know. It's sometimes like almost in a sense where, hang on a minute, like,
Mm-hmm.
is the universe trying to play a little game with me right now? Like, not hardball, like not like a good game of football right now, but like a real mean ass, real mean ass game. 'Cause that's how it feels. It does.
Yeah. Yeah, it's exciting, and it's like a weird situation where they were like, "Hey, you're gonna come do this thing," and like I've done stuff with the Bucks before. Like I got to go to media day and like watch Giannis and Dame Lillard talk to the media, so that was cool. And I was like, I do not belong here, but it is what it
Is
is. So I'll pretend
no,
it.
and
I'll
you know what?
fake it.
No, and you know what? Honestly, like it's credit. It's where credit is due and where credit is deserved. Because like I can honestly like I haven't met you before, but I can honestly tell like you're not a person that just sits around on a goddamn couch and watches freaking Netflix all day. Like you are. You're a hard worker. You've put a lot of energy and a lot of work into this.
Yeah.
And it's not something that like happened yesterday. And that that alone is like obviously you can't expect just because you've done all of this hard work and you've put yourself out there and try to be there in the community and do as much outreach as you possibly can that like you're gonna get rewarded. Like that's not just realistic, but like being able to have that just a little bit, it feels good. It feels like like you put all of this and you're like getting a little bit of a reward for it.
Yeah, totally. And like my whole thing is like no one's gonna do it for you. You know what I mean? Like it has totally been a lot of what I do is based on, just get there, do something, make sure something happens. There was one time where like something with the Brewers was coming up, and I was like, I don't know if I might go to this thing, and then I like stopped, and I was like, are you too good for the professional sports team in town right now? Like, are you too good for the Milwaukee Brewers to invite you to something and not go? Like, so I had to stop myself and be like, okay, like if you want this, like go work for it. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And we talked about this before, and I think this is something that's really, really important to touch on. And I this is kind of also one of the reasons why like having somebody like you as a content creator is really important to have on. Is in this country we have really forgotten, especially the Midwest and the central part of the United States, in
Hmm.
the fact that people like yourself grew up in parts of our country where you had people 90, 100, 100, even 150 years ago that came to these parts of the United States to build communities, to build
Hmm.
foundations, and eventually built a lot of what we now know of today as like Motown, funk, the music scene, Sawgrass. A lot of also sports teams and stuff came out of the Midwest because you got miners, right? People that are settling over there and then they raising kids and they're like,
They need
you've got
something to
seven
do.
kids.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
need
you got eight kids.
entertainment. Yeah.
Yeah, let's make a baseball team. Let's do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And it's been forgotten, which it hurts a little that it's like it's kind of pushed in the back of the drawer a little too much, to be honest.
Right. Well, I think now, like, the great equalizer is definitely the internet in the sense
Oh
that,
yes.
you know, like, it just in terms of music, thinking like years and years ago, you had to go to New York or LA to go make yourself heard. For us, you even had to go down, maybe like down to Chicago. And like, there is still definitely value in geographically like being there, but you can also make something in Milwaukee and somebody's going to notice that in another part of the world, right? And you can have a global reach without having to leave the comfort of home now, which is such a game changer, and definitely something that like helps cities like Milwaukee kind of get remembered more than anything. I don't want to say like put on the map, but like remembered is probably the better way to put it.
Oh yeah. And I mean, look, I'm not trying to diss or be mean towards Chicago in any shape or form, but let's be real for a sec. Illinois is basically just Chicago. And I'm
Right.
not I'm not trying to sugarcoat that. Like You literally have an entire state that you just have one place that has potential. And everywhere else, like, no offense, like, it sucks. You
Hmm.
have no absolute, like, options or anything of any kind of hour. Even with internet and everything that's available, you're kind of forced to. But Wisconsin is the complete opposite. It's like you have all these small little rural towns. You've got Kenosha, you've got Milwaukee, and you kind of you told me this too. Like even being able to travel back and forth and kind of being able to collaborate with people in another town. Like those are things that are really important because it then allows you to do a little bit more outreach in your own home state and in
Hmm.
your own place.
Yeah, and there's a guy that's from Milwaukee. His name's Xavier Ruffin, and he'll never remember this, but he put this on Facebook years ago, and he was like, the secret is, and he like lives out in LA and has moved to Atlanta and like done a lot of like big production work for like TV and film, but he put on Facebook one time, the secret is to go out to these places, network, build that community, and then bring that back home. And like that always stuck with me. Just one Facebook status of like, go out, do the work, come back, bring what you learned back to Milwaukee, and then help build that up here. So I think that's part of what I do is when I do get to travel places and go, to music festivals or whatever it might be, or just larger cities, what are they doing that's working out there, and how do I bring that back here and make something unique out of it?
Yeah, because honestly, that we tend to forget that as artists, we in a sense are a community in
Hmm.
any shape of the word that you want to look at it. And what that means is that either that can mean home base or like you said, it could be a place like Los Angeles where you can connect with other people that are in a completely different environment than you. Like, let's be real, like a place like LA is survival of the fittest.
Yeah.
You have to like it's a fact in LA as a musician, as an artist, as a creator, you have to slaughter people metaphorically speaking in order to survive.
Yeah,
That
it's
means
probably the world's most talented baristas and bartenders, And that's no slight to baristas and bartenders, but like that's
so
probably all people
accurate.
trying to make it.
It's so accurate. No, and it's true. And then when you're able to come back, like you said, and that kind of is good inspiration. You're able to come back to home base and realize like you're not competing against 8 million people
Hmm.
in a tiny little area. You're competing with a very little, and it's not even competing in the sense because you're in an area where it's so spread out and it's so small where instead of competing, you can collaborate more. You see what I mean? It's like you can almost see the differences between those environments. Like you said, being able to explore that environment,
Right.
being there physically.
Yeah, and I think in a larger city like Los Angeles or New York, there's so much competition that it can be deflating. Here, it is still definitely there's like some competition, but everybody knows everybody in Milwaukee, kind of thing. If you're involved in the music scene for long enough, like you eventually get to know everyone or kind of brush past with people, or at least learn names of people along the way, right? I do think it's still competitive. That there's still like that element of like steel sharpens steel, and people try to see how they can be the best in their city. But it doesn't feel unattainable. Like if you're, in LA or New York and you're not making it, like that can be crushing to not be able to get out of even your own city. Whereas here, there's a feeling like you can have some momentum without it being, you know, you're competing against maybe a few thousand people as opposed to competing against like hundreds of thousands of people in those larger
Yeah.
markets.
And also, another thing to touch on, which I think is important, is the fact that, right, when you deal with places like LA, Chicago, Atlanta, New York, if you're from there, like for example, from me, I'm from New York. If you're from New York, you have a much easier time because you talk the talk,
Mm-hmm.
you understand the brutal nature, and you know how to be able to survive and adapt yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with, somebody trying to explore and figure out those areas. By all means, you should go right ahead. But being able to have that advantage where you're able to understand your own environment, like for example, for your own self, that does give you a very strong advantage because it allows you to pave yourself a really clean route. You're then able to ask yourself the question, okay, I've explored all of these places, right? I live in Milwaukee, and I kind of understand the music scene here. Okay, I understand. I have a passion for sports. In your case, I kind of understand where the direction that people are going. I've been in this industry for a while. You're then able to clear yourself an actual path to really give yourself an actual opportunity. I'm not
Right.
saying that you should limit yourself, but that is something to take into mind, especially
Mhm.
when you're living in different places that's not your home base.
Yeah, and when you only have, I mean, like a limited number of resources, sometimes that can actually kind of work in your advantage because you have these places that you can try and fail. But it isn't like trying and failing on a grand scheme, right? Like,
Yeah,
you think of like, okay, bad example here, but like stand up comedy of if you fail at the Laugh Factory in LA, like everybody has seen and heard that you failed at that place. If you fail at Bremen Cafe in Milwaukee, like you got another swing at that because also there's probably another chance that you're going to be back on that stage. And so I guess like having that limited amount of resources can still be an advantage in the fact that maybe nobody sees what you're doing here until they only see your wins, right? Like they only see the big
yeah,
things.
yeah, 100%. And you know what? You bring up a great point about stand-up comedy because when I was in New York a few weeks ago, and I was in Brooklyn, I was seeing two friends of mine that I'm really close with, and we went to a comedy show on Thursday night. And what's really interesting is, like, to your point, where if you're in Brooklyn and you're a starting up comedian and you're trying to figure yourself out or whatever, and you kind of make too many political jokes for your own good and you say a few things you shouldn't be saying, it's fine. You're trying out your material. It's the same thing, for example, where you have musicians, right? They go to live venues. I'm sure they have this in Wisconsin, and they try out new material, they try out new songs. It doesn't land so well. People are
Mm-hmm.
kind of like, eh.
Yeah.
You learn. You're like, okay, this is one music event. We'll have another one. Maybe we'll try another roster of songs. Maybe we'll try a different. You're trying out the audience. You're trying to get your feet a little bit wet. And I think pushing yourself away from this idea of like, oh my god, I have to be perfect. I can't fail. Like, I think that's the most stupidest thing that you can do to yourself. If you don't fail, how the hell are you supposed to be successful?
Yeah, oh totally. And for everything that I've done, there's definitely been 10 things that have not worked out, right? So
Yeah,
I've definitely had a lot of no's along the way, and whether that's, access to events or advertisers or whatever, like you just, I think, become resilient and you learn to roll with it and say, okay, well, what can I do? And eventually after a while, like you get some inertia from that and you find the little win becomes a slightly larger win, becomes a slightly larger win. And I do think a lot of artists don't want to take that path, but when you do, it can be beneficial for sure.
it is. And you know what? Like, I'm not trying to sugarcoat in anything, shape, or way, but, one thing being able to have these conversations with artists, especially like yourself, which is this idea of notion that it's easy, that you can be a successful artist, you can, strive your way, or as ACDC puts it, it's a long way to the top if you want to rock and roll.
Mm-hmm.
I just, I try to have this level of reality, and I know that you know this as well, where this is probably one of the hardest things that you will do in your life.
Mm-hmm.
If you really are passionate about the arts, you're a creative person, like, by all means. But also keep in mind that you are going to work your fucking ass off. That
Yeah.
means you're not going to be able to travel sometimes that often because you're broke as hell. You're going to have times where you're going to be spending your weekends just working, doing, podcasting, or if you're doing music production or filmmaking. Like, these are all sacrifices and things you have to take in mind because, like, we live in a world where they don't you don't get credited or respected or grow in whatever you want to call as a career if you choose to do these things in your life.
Yeah.
It's like you do this, especially in this country, it's like, all right, enjoy the shitstorm because it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, yeah, and totally. I think that so I grew up in the era of like Warp Tour and pop punk and all of these things. And so it was an era of if you didn't work hard, you didn't get noticed, right? Like a lot of the
Right.
friends and bands that I knew, I had a friend in a band that was on MySpace at the time that told me every time that they were playing a city, and they were in high school at the time, so this isn't as weird as it sounds, But every time that they would play in a certain town or a city, they would find the local high school. They'd find everybody in that high school on Facebook or MySpace or whatever at the time, and they would message all of them, "Hey, we're playing your city this night. Like it would be great if you come out and see us." Like they had to go in and do that manual work of literally going one to one to people to be like, "Hey, we are coming to your area. Like we want to see you there." To in order to even get noticed. And so I grew up around a lot of hardworking bands, and I really liked seeing that. When I was a kid, I wanted to be one of those guys that worked on the Warped Tour. I never had the chance to do it, but it was the kind of thing of like I wanted that kind of like grind and hustle of every day getting in, setting up in order to experience the fun parts of it too, right? Like in order to experience the show and be around it. But I also wanted to be somebody that was working behind the scenes and putting in the work because it felt so much more rewarding to like see the show happen because you helped to make that happen, you know? So
Yeah, and again though, right? It ties into artist collaboration. It's working together as a team instead of fighting each other.
mm-hmm, for sure. And yeah, and now in Milwaukee, like what we have, it used to not like be like this at all. And it used to be like this pocket of people didn't really mess with this pocket of people over here on the other side of town or whatever. And now I think partially thanks to things like what I've built with Breaking and Entering, like there's a central resource that people can at least learn about each other. They can hear each other's music. They can discover each other that way. There are definitely many more outlets that do that now, which wasn't always the case. But when we started, it was kind of also with that idea of like bringing people together and saying, "Hey, there's amazing talent here in your own city. Like, come check out these people." So, and putting a light on those sorts of things.
There is, and I think we talked about this the last time we spoke, but for me, like I'm in the automotive industry, and it's really it's really interesting to think that for a long period of the American independent automaker industry, a lot of it was based in Wisconsin. You had companies like Nash, you had companies like um, AMC, American Motor Corporation, and the hilarious part is if you ask people that are maybe like 29, 30, they have no idea what you're talking about. I mean, unless if you're like from, if you're from Wisconsin, obviously, your grandparents, your grandparents had like, one of those cars, probably still stuck in a barn somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And that has gone completely away. And what does this have to do with the artist industry? It has a lot to do with the artist industry because when you build communities where you have people that are reliant around, factories in order to work, and then you have the big three that comes along,
Mm-hmm.
and they basically this is true fact of the United States today. You basically have three choke they basically three chokeholds, which is the big
Sure.
three and they don't really do any manufacturing in this country anymore. They do everything in Canada and Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what it does is it dilutes the communities, and what happens is a lot of the times people start isolating. It's
Yeah.
where you have one town that doesn't want to deal with another person. It's like, well, we're struggling. What the hell do you want from us? We got to take care of ourselves. Like we have thousands of people that have no jobs. And by the way, for people that are growing up and they have their parents that have this misery and this crap going on in their head, and then you have kids that are growing up in these homes, that does something to people. So having like bands and post punk and rap and all those things kind of getting a little bit of rebellion and then trying to be able to piece yourself out and try to be able to get these venues together, that shapes an environment over a period of like 40, 50 years. It does.
Yeah, and Milwaukee definitely went through that for us. I mean, when I was a kid growing up, it was probably the fallout of a lot of that. You know,
Yeah.
like in the 90s, Milwaukee had a lot of, had a lot of change that needed to happen, right? When I was growing up. And now, especially in this last 10, 15 years in Milwaukee, there has been so much of an effort to rebuild what the identity of the city is. And part of that includes arts and entertainment, absolutely. Part of that also includes sports, like, well, really within the last 25 years, building new stadiums, building new venues, We're getting more music venues now than we've ever had in a long time. So things like that are part of shaping the identity of the city and changing that because we were very industrial for a very long time.
Yeah.
But having a city now that has more than that going on, like the tech sector isn't really here yet, but it could be coming here. Like there's a few startups and things like that. And that whole world is coming into Milwaukee. But like changing the identity and growing what Milwaukee is definitely like essential to us, and music and entertainment is a big component of that.
It is. And you know what? Like, even touching on sports, because we said this earlier, and how, especially when you have people that are moving to different places when there was nothing there, and then eventually building communities where they, eventually have sports teams starting to be built. Like, something I have personally noticed more than anything else, Midwesterners take sports way more seriously and this is a fact. They take sport like I know somebody out here that's from the Midwest, and his parents, you go to their house and it's just Green Bay
Mm-hmm.
everywhere. Like the tablecloths, the the dining room sets, the living room. Like I mean, just hard. And I can kind of understand that in a sense. It's like you grow up, obviously, like in the '90s, and trying to get out of that industrial.
Yeah.
So you try to give your kids some type of entertainment, some creativity, and you have sports.
Yep.
And
Absolutely.
that's
And
that's kind of how it grows around.
that is Wisconsin, in a nutshell. Is Sunday afternoon, if the Packers are playing, like the city shuts down. You can get anywhere in the city in probably 15 minutes. Normally, you could probably get there in 10 on a Packers game day if it's during the game, because people are just they're at their bar, and they're watching it where they want to watch it, or they're at their house with their friends. Like something is happening that we are all locked into those TVs for 3 hours, right? And that's just kind of how it is, and I think it's based in tradition, but like that feeling too of being like we're the little guys has always been there. Especially, Green Bay is the smallest market. It's the only market that's outside of a major U.S. city in the whole NFL. So
It is, yeah.
Milwaukee's about 2 hours south of that, but we still claim that as our team, obviously, very much so. The whole state does. And so, yeah, having that feeling of like, this is us, this is our thing, has always been there for sure.
Yeah, it's not just people. It's not just cheese. Okay, Wisconsin's known for a lot more stuff than just cheese. And it's really, what's really funny is because when we look at this country, in many ways, we're looking at 50 sovereign nations, right? Because,
Mm-hmm.
you take somebody, I love this, like, you take somebody from, like, Wisconsin, and then you put them against somebody from North Carolina. Let's just say that they're both in music production. I guarantee you, if you put them in front of a computer and ask them to create music, just give them no direction, just say, just make me music. You're going to get two completely different versions of like their idea of music because
Mm-hmm.
yeah, they're both Americans. They both were raised in the same country, but one's raised in North Carolina and the other person's raised in Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's like apples and oranges right there. And I'm
Yeah.
sure you've experienced that, especially with dealing with other artists.
Well, to your point too about Wisconsin is more than just cheese. A big thing is trying to convince people that Milwaukee is more than just we're not rural over here. We're a city. We have five hundred
Yeah.
thousand people. We're the mayor would love it to be 1 million people at some point that live here. Um, but just being able to convince people that like we are one, not just a small farm town, like same as Madison is a college town and very much built up like a city. And having to so out of the gate with people you have to explain like what Milwaukee is sometimes. And that it's more than just you would expect like country music here. We really actually don't have that big of a country music scene compared to like the amount of like hip hop that's made here, the amount of like indie rock and alternative rock and punk and things like that. So having to explain that sometimes is like the first hurdle, and that's like the introduction.
God, it's hilarious. No, it is. It's so funny because there's this stereotype of Midwesterners, like
Mm-hmm.
this hardcore stereotype of like the way that they talk. It's like, oh, Midwesterners, they're like, oh yeah, like they always have that accent. I'm like, bro, like Midwesterners sound more American than some Americans sound. Like, I'm gonna be straight up and honest.
Well,
True.
we do have that accent, and we are all like very polite. It is very much a thing in Wisconsin. There's the Midwest goodbye, which is when you say goodbye to somebody, and then 10 minutes later you actually leave because you thought about that one thing to talk about, and you start getting on a tangent about something. Like, I've very much been in that more times than I can imagine. The unfortunate, like the meme of saying, "Oh, let me sneak past you right there." That's real, and you just say it, and you don't even realize you're saying it. Like, so some of those things are very much true. But if it's a, you know, if it's a bad trait to be too polite, then that's fine.
No, and I think also this idea of like being tied only with country music, I think it's also very sedentary in the sense of come on, man, like there's so many other genres and there's so many almost like you even touched on like even like for example proto punk or even
Hmm.
being able to be in the grunge and indie scenes. Like there's so much more to the music scenes all over this country, especially in that part of the United States where like to dilute it down to just like two or three genres, it's just so I don't know. I personally feel it's a little bit disrespectful because then you're like
Hmm.
kind of putting people such as yourself like in this box or like, okay, so because you're in this environment, you can only make this and this kind of music. I'm like, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
that's not real at
I
all.
think people from outside of the rest of the country would be shocked to know the amount of hip hop that gets made here, because that is like in Milwaukee, that is probably the most like large talent pool is hip hop artists here, and then second would definitely be like indie rock. Those two, as far as original music is concerned, are probably the biggest things. And then like country is so sparsely down, at least in the Metro Milwaukee area, compared to where the rest of the country might be as far as like that makeup of artists. But a lot of people want to be rappers here. We have several very talented ones, but yeah, just that dynamic shift is entirely something that's pretty unique.
It is, and also by the way, that is a really true thing to touch on as well is the fact that there's this idea that's been floating around, and honestly, I think a lot of it has to be blamed to the internet, where hip hop, R&B, and soul get tied into rap. It's like
Mm-hmm.
they all become rap, and it's like forgetting this idea of like, okay, hip hop, R&B, and soul can be rap, but
Right.
they can also be something else.
Yeah.
Like they don't always tie into one another. Like, correct me if I'm wrong, but like there's this like almost dilution of where everybody's just been throwing it into a ninja blender that they buy off of Costco for like 3.89 on sale, and just just
Yeah.
mix it all together.
Yeah. Well, now, I mean, it's even evolved beyond that too, and this is like something that I think about with, for as much as streaming has its disadvantages for artists, I think there's also that ability to draw influence from every type of music along the way as well. So now, like, I see a lot of kids in Milwaukee that are making the real interesting stuff right now is like a mixture of like hyper pop, and where it's like kind of pop music, it's a little bit of hip hop influence, a little bit of R&B, a little bit of like even punk rock thrown in there, and it's this weird blend of genres that's all in one. But that's the stuff that's starting to get attention here too. There's a crew called Run Along Forever, because they were the kids that were told to run along and play forever. Is kind of like the theory behind their name. But they make a lot of like
But
hyper pop, and they travel the country and get out of Milwaukee and like bring that sound to people too. But like it's that mix of just like super super distorted bass like hip hop would have. There's some EDM and electronic dance elements in it. The music, like their vocals are all super like auto tuned out, but it's in this own like unique, very internet based thing that you would never associate it with like this part of the country normally. So the fact that that
Mhm.
is catching on, or like there's artists like Lake and Gucko that are and Eli Stones that are currently making stuff that sounds like traditional like pop punk stuff, but also they came out of hip hop, all of them. So like to have that kind of merging of genres is pretty wild to see, but I think that's probably like a byproduct of being able to get interested in bands because you didn't have that barrier to access, right? Of having to go to the
Yeah.
store and buy something or having to go to a library and rent something. You can click a button and you can get that influence now, and that creates something entirely different.
It does. And again, I think this is something that gets lost in the weeds a lot of the times. We're heavily relying on software and technology, like synchronizers and mixers and auto tune. It doesn't make you less talented than an artist. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
think it's fucking ridiculous that we have this idiocracy in our heads. It's like, oh, well, if you can't, sing properly and if you can't play an instrument, you can't make music. I'm like, you know this because you work with tons of indie artists. Like, how many of them heavily rely on software? And I'm like, you know what? You, as a schmuck, you try to do the same crap that they try to do. Good
Mm-hmm.
luck.
Yeah, there's still like the process of having to make it sound good and cohesive with everything else that you're doing, right? I'm curious. I would love to know your take on, because there's been a debate lately on like AI music and where that stands. People like are drawing a hard line that they're like this doesn't count. And I am kind of the belief that, well, it's really just the evolution of the synthesizer, right? Like if you think about it, or of DJing or whatever, like you could, yes, in theory, say that there's less effort put into it, but there still has to be some human input into it right now to like say, hey, I
There
want to
is.
craft this, or whatever it might be, or like I want to make a soul sample that's instrumental, and it will generate one, but then how do you use it? So I would love to know what your stance is on AI music and where you think that that kind of belongs, because that's been a lot of chatter on the internet lately.
Oh, it has. And I've touched on it. I like to use this analogy, which is when Brian Eno came to the scene in the early 70s and he started playing around with computers and making synthesizers. And he's one of the founding forefathers of digital music that we know of today. They thought that he was a cheater, a liar, not a real artist. He was just
Mm-hmm.
some IT guy that thought that he could. But reality is, he was a freaking genius. He
Mm-hmm.
figured out something in a time where things were way more analog than they are today. That you had a computer that was the size of a freaking like high school, basketball like
Right.
court, right? And he was able to figure that out. So the way I look at it like this is, whether anybody want to understand it, we know this as artists, right? If you try to go onto Beethoven AI and you're just some dumbass and you just type away and you try to make a song, I guarantee you it's going to sound like shit.
Yeah.
But if you're an actually talented artist and you use tools and AIs, like for example, they have in plugins. So you have, I don't think Logitech Pro does this, but you have other audio softwares that you can use that you can add in these plugins that can, for example, I've seen one of them, which I think is really, really cool. You can take a loop. So you can take, for example, like a beat,
Mm-hmm.
and you can get AI, you could put it onto the beat, and then you could see, for example, of either slowing it down, changing the tempo, changing, for example, the chord, so the chord progression. So you could literally have where AI changes the chord progression for you from start to finish. So the beat can either get either a minor, then go down to. Now, you could do all the stuff yourself, but when you're a content creator and when you're an artist and you're a musician and you're trying to put all these things together, it's really, really great to have these tools because then you could
Right.
say, I don't know about the song. Maybe I want to try it in a different direction, and then spending hours trying something differently, and then seeing it doesn't work. Do that in 2 seconds. Like,
Yeah,
okay, this doesn't
exactly.
work. All right, let me try something else.
Yeah, totally.
I think
And
this I
like
think this is amazing.
I got my initial start really in producing beats and making beats for hip hop artists. That was kind of some of my first real like forays into like publicly putting music out, and getting beats made for artists, and spent lots of time in what is now FL Studio. At the time was Fruity Loops, and really when you think about it, yes, there was a lot of clicking and dragging and arranging and trying things out. Could somebody argue that yes, I was not like playing a guitar, playing the drums, even though I do know how to do those things? Yeah, of course.
I play guitar also. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So, but the same thing could be said for like I'm a very poor DJ, and I can still mix songs, and I can still I'll use the beat match or whatever like on the turntable because I'm an amateur for sure, and to like be able to sync things up, I'll do that. Is it as you still have to use that brain power of like I have to match these songs up. I have to find out what would go good here. You know what I mean? What would fit in as the next song. So like I feel like that line always of like where does the human input end and where does the machine take over, like it just keeps getting blurrier and blurrier, and eventually like if people don't accept it, they're just going to be left behind on it. Now I will say that there's always going to be room for somebody that can play a guitar well, somebody that can sing incredibly, somebody that can play bass, somebody that can drum, all of those things. But I don't think that we should totally look at that thing and say we can't use this technology and make it into some sort of art that is a collaboration of human and machine. Which I think right now there's so much discourse online that is like, this is bad, we shouldn't do anything creative with it. Where I'm very much like, this is the way of everything going forward, and we're just going to speed up the process, is essentially what we're going to do.
I, I don't like to throw out like famous bait, but I'll be honest. I think one of the biggest influencers that has kind of caused a lot of the problems in AI, especially within media. I don't think it's his fault. I just think he likes to have conversation. Is Joe Rogan.
Mm-hmm.
He talks sometimes, no offense, with some people personally. I feel they're lunatics.
Yeah.
They're lunatics. They're not sane minded people. They're talking out of their ass, and you can kind of know this because you know obviously when you're somebody that's really famous and your time is already cut, like you don't always have the time to do your research on every single person. Like I have a little bit of a caveat. You also do as well, where you're able to go on Podmatch, reach somebody. We could do a pre-call, talk out a little bit, and figure. So what happens is then you get these people on like AI is going to take over the world. People are going to turn into the Borg from Star Trek. I'm like, okay, first off, like I said earlier, people were talking about Brian Eno like this 40 years ago and saying that
Right.
he was a. They were talking about David Bowie. You can go online right now and see articles from Variety. They're talking about how crazy David Bowie was. This psycho alien standing up on the stage looked like a freaking skeleton surviving on milk and cocaine and peppers throughout the 70s. Like,
Yeah.
again, it's just the reality of like as time progresses, we do live in an industrial age. You're always for probably the next few hundred years, you're probably going to need some level of human input in the
Mm-hmm.
auto industry, the medical industry, the entertainment industry. Like, yes, you could watch videos right now of AI making movies.
Right.
Let's be real. Like, eventually you can use that AI maybe to replace CGI, right? Maybe that's what it is. Maybe what it'll be instead of heavily relying on CGI, we'll rely on using AI instead of.
Yeah.
I I don't see a problem with that.
Yeah, and to be honest, like I think it's also going to make the creative people survive, right? Like that is going to be what it is. If the AI things are going to have a much larger influence, I won't say take over because that sounds apocalyptic and weird, but if the AI things are going to have a much larger influence in entertainment, you're still going to need creative people to drive those things. Or the people that are creative about how to use it are going to be the ones that actually get to survive. You know what I mean? That actually get to survive again. Sounds pretty apocalyptic, but survive in the sense of being able to keep working regularly. Like people that are
Right.
challenging something or making something that is new and different or trying to figure out what new and different even looks like. Those are going to be the people that are going to survive in terms of career wise. And when it comes to music, Like the people that are going to be able to adapt and change and grow those things and manipulate the AI in a way that they want, those are going to be the people that actually have something going for themselves and will be able to sustain a career, I think, too. The people that embrace it, at least. Like I said,
Yeah.
always think there's room for a great musician. It's just a matter of how do you mix those things and utilize them as a tool.
Yeah. 100%. And what do you what do you think about that in regards to, influencers, especially podcasters that again, they bring these people on and they do a lot of fear mongering.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, you have millions of people that are listening to this, you know. Do you do you feel like there's somewhat of an influence where a lot of this crap that we're seeing online of the takeover and stuff is because of influencers like this that have podcasters that are pushing stuff like this out? I
Yeah, I
think that
think.
I think
I
that's a little
mean,
too
I
much.
think it is hard when the narrative right away is the public reaction for a lot of people. Maybe not everybody was. This is going to take our job. This is going to take our whatever. Like, but I think there's also, like you said, people that bring those things on because, anytime that we mention as podcasters, anytime we mention AI, like that is going to bump something up in terms of viewership, in terms of listenership, because people are interested. They definitely want to know
Yeah.
what's happening, right? But when the people that you bring on are only of that perception that the AI stuff is bad, it's all bad, then your brain starts to say, okay, this is all bad. So, for instance, I have a really, really good friend that is a writer as well, was a media personality. And he was like, anything AI is bad. Like, that is his full stance on it, full stop. Anything AI, we shouldn't be using it, it's bad. And
He's
I,
entitled
I,
to his opinion.
yeah. And so my counterpoint was we were cutting down trees by hand for years. And then a chainsaw showed up and then we figured out how to use the chainsaw. So in the industry that I'm in, if you don't figure out how to use the chainsaw, you're gonna get left behind. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying that I'm having AI write articles for me or anything like that. Like, again, still human input. But have I
Yeah.
figured out ways to be productive on the back end and be able to do more using it? Of course, 1000%. Like, for example, I have a radio show that I run Friday nights at 9 p.m. in Milwaukee on FM radio. And I have right now a bank of like 100 songs that, because I play only Milwaukee artists. So I've got a bank of like 100 songs that are unique. I have my playlist for the rest of the year because I threw in that list of 100 songs into an AI and said, hey, make the next 20 episodes for me, make the playlist for what it's going to be. You can only use 10 songs. I want to vary it up as much as possible. Immediately productive. I can go in, I can record a show for December. I can record it tomorrow and know what I'm going to play. So
Yeah.
like it's totally just in how you use it and where you use it. But like to your original point, when the narrative is all this is bad, that it doesn't encourage anybody to take a leap into it and try to advance themselves using it. So I think it could be detrimental, especially in parts of the country that I live in too. Coming back to that conversation about it, on the coast, there's people that are more receptive to it. There's a lot of people here that are afraid of it, but somebody's going to figure out how to use it and use it to their advantage, and might as well be you, right?
Yeah, and I mean, you touched on something which is really true in the sense of where, like, even in the auto industry, a very big reality is that the era of parts changers and horrible mechanics, you're gone. Like, I'm not
Yep.
trying to be mean. Like, your life, your career is over because we've reached an era where you have German manufacturers and Japanese manufacturers. They're sick and tired of this crap.
Mm-hmm.
So they're heavily now relying on technologies like AI and software and diagnosing and being able to understand these procedures because it's efficient. It's much more efficient than being that stupid dodo brain that's like, well, this is leaking. I'm just going to change this. And then the person could drive their car. And then,
Yeah.
God forbid, there's been cases where people literally, and I've had this happen to me, you're literally driving a vehicle and it's extremely dangerous to drive because you're having transmission issues. You're having your suspension that's falling apart. The same thing with the same thing with the music industry too. You have
Mm-hmm.
people that are stuck in this stupid bubble of their heads, and it's like you're making the same garbage crap rap that doesn't even sound good anymore. It's like, well, we're trying to be like, Run DMC. I'm like, you can never be Run DMC. You
Yeah.
can never
Oh,
be Nas. You will never be Cypress Hill. Okay, they were insane writers for their time. Even now.
I think you're giving that too much credit. I think that in mainstream hip hop right now, there's a lot of there's a reason that hip hop had fallen out of popularity as the most popular genre. It's still definitely like a very very popular genre. Don't get me wrong,
Yeah.
but the substance of hip hop in the last 5 to 10 years, especially with the amount of like pay for play and things like that happen, you don't need to make a hot song anymore to be popular. Like that, there are artists that I will never listen to because it just sounds formulaic and boring to me. And I've heard the same thing get dropped every Friday for me from 20 other artists for the last 5 years. Like it definitely is, it gets stagnant to a point where people say, well, the algorithm tells us that I'm supposed to like this, so we make that. And like it just does not spur creativity in any sense.
No. You know what? I'm going to say it straight up, which is we have religions like Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. The other religion that we've created in the past 20 years is a religion for the internet and social
Mm-hmm.
media and algorithm. Like it is. It's a religion. It's like you are either putting a cross on your chest or you're gonna the synagogue or the church or the mosque every single day. Because that's what it is. It's like either you can either get out of your own mind, like for example yourself, right, and be able to have a radio show, be able to do podcasting, collaborate with other artists, be able to explore around the United States and figure out what's going around, and actually make something that's meaningful. Okay, not just clickbait crap over and over and again. I'm like, it irritates me because it's like the whole purpose of being creative is being genuine to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You are representing yourself as an artist and as a creator. Why the hell are you chasing after numbers?
Yeah.
Numbers.
Well, numbers do mean money in the media space, unfortunately. But I get what you're saying, though. Like when
It's
I
not.
see, yeah, when I see the back end
It's
of
not a good
things,
foundation. That's what I'm trying to point out.
yeah,
You're creating your career on a crumbling foundation that has no real structure.
yeah, and I see so many things because I follow a ton of media outlets because I want to know, what generally what the plan is, what everybody's doing, what kind of content is successful, what kind of content is not. I see so many things that are watered down versions of what, the actual the root of it is. The root of it is successful, and then you see everybody copy it and make their own diluted version of it, from a content standpoint. And so like at some point, yes, those things might get numbers, but I'm the kind of person that I can scroll through Instagram and see a post from a major outlet and go, well, I know why they posted that. You know, like it has nothing to do with the ethos of what that organization is, but I know why they posted that. There was to get engagement online. When I see, I won't say which major media outlet is just like posting pictures of female celebrities that look good and they're a music and culture outlet, and I see them just posting that and they're like a moment of appreciation for this person. Well, I know why they're posting that. It's not to actually appreciate that person. It's because people are going to comment on that and people are going to tap like on that photo and they're going to see it further down in their algorithm. When I see a major sports publication posting like viral videos that have nothing to do with sports, I know why that's happening now because I'm on the other side of that and I know somebody is being told, "Hey, we need to increase engagement. This sort of thing is going to work. Do that." And it has nothing to do with what the actual ethos of what that publication is. Like that's the frustrating thing for me is when you see those things and you go, "There's a better way to do this. There's a better way to be authentic and engaging." And when you see that and you like have to just kind of peel back because it does no good for me to be like this is crap and comment on that, right? But it's just frustrating to watch it and be like, well, enjoy your fast food, I guess. Like it's how I think of it. And yeah, I don't know.
No,
It's a
no, and
weird media landscape in 2025.
it is, and for example, like there's nothing wrong of being able to post things on social media and trying to be able to build your like kudos if you're able to do that, and I think that's for example, like I know a comedian out in New York. Her name is Leah Foster, and she has this thing where she'll post little reels of her walking around the city, and she'll talk about real stuff, like stuff that she's going through, different things that she's learned along the way in her career, or something that she's run along from like talking with a friend. That is more genuine. You have a real artist that is being unique, is trying to be their most genuine self, and is utilizing these tools to the best interest, not just for clickbait, not just for numbers. That's what I think is the most important thing. You touched on this, which is really important, is that like it's great to have a base, but chasing out of the numbers solely because something is popular, I
Hmm.
promise you it's not going to be popular tomorrow.
Right. Well, even from the music standpoint too, like we said, like if you want to make that one hot song just to have one hot song out, fine. But you know what? 10 years from now, like there are songs that did not age well from 10 years ago, right? Because they were of the moment, and they were so of the moment that they weren't anything that felt real and felt like something you would love to love to go back to. I'm watching it now with a lot of the bands that were big in the Warped Tour days and were big in that, and they're coming back on these nostalgia tours, and I'm like, well, your new stuff doesn't feel good and your old stuff didn't age well. So what do we have here, right? Like, so I mean, yeah, I think it's always that thing of legacy uh, over the get rich quick kind of feel of music or creative stuff, whatever it might be, or media or whatever. Like if you try to create something that's going to last a long time, it will over time it will do that. If you try to create something that's going to be hot for a second, enjoy what that feels like 10 years down the line when it's not hot anymore, and nothing you can do is going to be hot for that.
No, 100%. I think one of the greatest examples I have ever seen in personally in my life is the fact that we live in a time where AC/DC is still performing. And the
Hmm.
fact that the man still gets up on stage wearing a schoolboy uniform in his late 60s. That is
Yeah.
the prime example of somebody like they've always been AC/DC.
Right.
Always. From the late 70s all the way to 2025. Like they have, and even I have their new album. I got their new album on vinyl. It was the custom one that's yellow.
Okay.
I freaking love it. And it came out like what? Like 3, 4 years ago?
Hmm.
Because it's still genuine to their band. It's new, it's fun, it's creative, it's got a new beat to it, but it's not trying to be popular, or chasing after trends. It holds up to the testament of time. And like you said, you can have a very successful career, but if you chase after things that are unrealistic, tell me if I'm wrong. You're not going to last very long in this industry. You maybe
Oh
be
no, I think
successful
it
good 5, six
I,
years.
yeah, I think you're totally right. I think one of the biggest things that I think artists fall into a problem of running after is being impatient, and being thinking that they need to have something immediate happen for them. And if you steadily build a fan base, that's great. But so many artists want to chase after having one song that is going to be huge, and they're going to, they think that they can propel that into something. So they do the most current thing that doesn't feel real to what they're doing. And when they make songs like that, it doesn't age well, right? Like it doesn't become a sustainable career, because the next thing you do has to be that. It has to fall back in line with that. And then eventually trends change, things change, the world changes, and you still sound like that, or you still look that way. Like there is no, because that impatience caused that.
And again, that impatience is so true because you see so many of these child celebrities, right?
Hmm.
That either their parents or they tried to push themselves either into fame, and then they got themselves around circles like Diddy.
Yeah.
And I mean, you got a career, you know. You were impatient, you pushed, and you got yourself. But now you're in your 20s and 30s. You're traumatized. You don't know how to function as a normal person. You don't
Right.
really know on how to create really content on your own because you're constantly relying on other people to create. That's the thing too, by the way, right? Where you have these artists where they're not really artists. You know, you look at their roster and the stuff that they're making, and you just see like 16 paragraphs of writers, producers, mixers. So you're just standing there.
Yeah, you are
You're
the
just
end product. You are not
right.
the creative behind it. Yeah.
No. And like I can kind of understand the same thing where you're creating you have a radio show and you want to be able to represent the best of Milwaukee. And you know, I'm sure obviously in every place you have those people. But to be able to fish through that and actually find the people where you can look at the work, you're like, oh wow, there's only like 2 or 3 people that actually made this.
Hmm.
Okay, I think this is worth my time looking at. Yeah.
Yeah, and one of the things that is honestly the most beneficial of having a radio show and having a platform to discover artists is being able to dig and find, new artists on Bandcamp and SoundCloud and Spotify and wherever or
Yeah.
social. Like there's definitely been artists that because what I usually do is I look through all the new releases. You can search it geographically. I'll look through a ton of new releases. Sometimes I'll find a band that maybe they're just putting their first thing out and it sounds very DIY, but you can tell that it's there, that they've got something that goes on the radio. You know what I mean? Like that goes out to people, or that goes to my website, that goes to Breaking and Entering, and people can see it and experience it for themselves because you can tell that they have the thing, right? So like being able to find an artist when they are a total baby band and have never, really even
Yeah.
made a push to get out there, that's a great feeling when you're like, look at this cool diamond in the rough that we found. Not because we can say that we found it, but just because we can take that thing that they made and put that out to a larger audience just by being who we are along the way. So having the radio
Yeah.
show, having the website, things like that, and finding those young bands and being able to put them out into a larger platform is super fulfilling for me.
And it touches on some of the something that we forget so badly as human beings is we are imperfect creatures.
Hmm.
We have always been imperfect. And I think chasing after perfection is it's not feasible. Like, you know what, as hard as you're going to be as an artist, there's always going to be things that you're not perfect at. You know, maybe you're not the best singer, or maybe you're not the best piano player, you're not the best, guitar player, but you're really good at software, you're really good at being able to like use tools like phasers and auto tune and stuff like that. Or maybe you're the type of artist I've met people like this that the only thing that they're really good at is writing.
Hmm.
That they're able to sit down and you're like, holy shit, you wrote that?
Yeah.
You're just like, whoa. But you put them in front of a computer, they can't make beats if their life depended on it. Does that
Right.
make you any less of an artist? No. It just means that you have skills and things that you're not perfect at, obviously, but you're a little bit, you have a little bit more feasible and ease to be able to do those things.
Right.
I think
Uh,
that awareness alone is so important.
Yeah, and to your point too before about saying like, well, you have an artist and then you have 100 producers behind that person. That is also the byproduct of people taking, the data of music and what we all enjoy and saying, well, you're not going to have a hit song unless the first 15 seconds grab you or the first 10 seconds grab you or whatever. And so we need to make the best first 10 seconds, or we need that clip that's going to go into your TikTok that is going to blow that TikTok up. And the data says this is what this needs to be. The music that you and I enjoy is not music that is crafted behind saying 10 seconds of this are going to make this a hit. It's the music that people just wrote something incredible and they made it and it doesn't sound perfect, right? Like
No.
the music that I love, the punk rock that I grew up on is not perfect by any means, right? And they just went with the first take sometimes and that was the best take. Or or something's not entirely perfect when you hear it live and it doesn't sound cut to the millimeter or the millisecond of this is when this needs to be on beat. Like having that little bit of flaw, I think, is something that makes it feel a little bit more relatable. And we're desperately close to losing that sometimes. But when you hear those imperfections and it feels real to you, that's the thing you connect with more. Not the data tells me that this 10 seconds needs to be a great song.
I learned that honestly. I got I also got this on vinyl. I got Coda from Led Zeppelin,
Hmm.
and I think not saying all artists, but I think some artists, if you really want to understand that idea of being able to accept imperfections and just wing it, listen to Coda, because
Yeah.
Coda is one of the great examples of where I think it was Robert Plant, um, that he just was like, you know what, fuck it, we've got all of the stuff that we never released, put it in an album, just
Yeah.
send it out there. Like I don't, and you listen to Coda, some of it is rough, some of it is demo tape, some of it is kind of a little more grainy than others, some is lower than others,
Hmm.
and you know that with vinyl, it's like you're listening to a song, you're like, why is this so low? And then you raise it, and then all of a sudden the next song comes on, you're like, oh my god, it's too loud, and you got to lower it again. But that I think is a really valuable lesson in life because it shows that don't hide what you're not perfect at. Try it.
Yeah.
See, just put it out there.
Well,
It's
yeah,
not
and I
great. It's
mean,
not
like,
great.
a lot of the, like, I've been going back to like a lot of like 80s punk rock stuff and the stuff that just got put out because they didn't care. They didn't care what it, that it wasn't perfect.
Like the dead Kennedys. Yeah, they didn't give a shit. They didn't
Yeah,
care.
or you know what I mean, like even the most interesting videos to watch for like behind the scenes stuff are when they go and they break down and they're like, "Hey, this was an accident here." And they show you like what part was an accident, but they're like, "But we kept it." I love those. I love watching every one of those because I'm like, "Oh, that's what you did in the studio. That's what came out of that session. Not, well, then we realized that there was an issue here, so we patched over it and we sliced it and we cut it down to where the line was on the screen to say that this was on beat, something like that." So it's like I love being able to hear a demo of a song and hear the evolution of that song become that thing, right? Hearing the rough version of it. So I think there's so much that captivates you from the imperfect version of a song. But like I said with like the 80s punk stuff, because they didn't care what it sounded like, or maybe they were limited by like, hey, you can only get in the studio for 2 hours at the end of the night, nail this take or whatever, we got to use it. Like sometimes that becomes the best stuff is when you just have to do it and you just have to make it and who cares, fuck it, put it out. Like that becomes the stuff that people latch onto.
I know. And you know what? I seriously, I really appreciate being able to have the, being able to talk with artists, especially like even for yourself, where you learn so much in your career about all of the mistakes and all of the things that have been done, and being able to not only just be aware, but being able to try to do something about it. You know, this idea of like, oh, I'm going to change the world. Like, obviously, neither of us are changing the world, but we can definitely try to do something to change either maybe our communities, the collaborations with other artists around us, and be able to give a little, a little judge, put in a
Yeah.
little extra spice, put a little, Creole seasoning in there. Um, I think that is the most important thing than anything else because if we want to survive and be able to continue on, that is the only way. You cannot change the world. I think that notion and idea is just so insane. It's like we're not Gandhi,
Yeah.
it's not
Most of
happening.
us aren't. Yeah, most of us
Yeah,
aren't going to
most
do
of us aren't.
anything that impactful for sure.
But you can do something impactful for yourself and for the people that are around you. And I think that's the most important.
Yes, totally, 1000%. I am with that. I believe that hard work does pay off, and for me, I've definitely just told myself sometimes when I hit those like rough spots of like you know maybe I don't want to work on something today, or I just don't feel like putting something out. Like something in the back of my head is like, but you want to be the best at this that you can be, right? Like that little bit of drive is just me telling it's me versus me saying you can be good at this if you really fucking put yourself into it. It's just a matter of doing it sometimes, and that I think is something that is a little bit of a lost thing, and not something unique to me by any means, but something that like you know it separates people. Is if you tell yourself I want to be the best at this, you're gonna work to be the best at this.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Before we wrap up, because we do have visuals on this podcast, and I've been saying this for the past hour that we've been talking. Let's get the elephant out of the room. I can see that you've got tons of records in the back.
Yep.
Huh? What
Yeah.
got? I know what got me into the craze of buying records. What stung you? It's usually like it
Um.
stings you, and you're just like you gotta keep on getting this shit.
So for me, like, it was always something cool when I was a kid, and actually, part of it came out of producing hip hop. To be really honest, is my parents had records. I put a turntable up in my room when I was probably 12 or 13 years old, and like because I was like naively, I knew that producers sampled records, that they played stuff off of vinyl. So when I was making beats, there would be times where I would take vinyl and I would try to make samples out of it. Now it was like very recognizable music that would never get cleared, but I definitely wanted to like run vinyl into my computer, even knowing well that I could download those songs. I don't know why. Something in my brain said do that. But then I started playing like old punk records from my parents on vinyl. Like I have an Elvis Costello bootleg behind me that's super rare that I used to listen to all the time. Um, so when I had my first apartment, I had like space to put my stereo in, and I brought the turntable with me. And then a good majority of what is behind me is like stuff that I actually inherited from an uncle who had a full like vinyl room where like he had an entire like listening room where there was these cases, literally these cases behind me, but they were the entire wall. And when he passed, a cousin and I split that record collection up in half. But he had, probably the better part of, a couple thousand records. And so this is a smaller version of it by a long shot. And then we whittled down like what we were going to sell, what we weren't going to sell. And so now I'm in that phase too now of just like buying and selling records too. So that's been a fun little thing for me to do. I sell records on Whatnot, and some of it are things that I would never listen to, and now I'm in this process of like flipping it over to that the majority of this wall are going to be things that I actually like and want to keep and hold on to. So, but I definitely kept like some rare stuff. There's a Pink Floyd box set behind me here that is the first 11 albums. So, and then there's a Beatles box set that's back here that was, I believe, only limited to like a few thousand copies of it were produced. So, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
but it's always been like a thing now. Like, there's still a vinyl player in reach for me, and I will still listen to records on vinyl when I'm in here working on stuff. So, like, it just, I don't know, just something cool. And I was doing it not because vinyl got popular. I just always had it for years and years and years. So,
Same. No, I feel this. I had this is the cool thing, and especially with music, right? Like I had a couple of years ago, I was in Salem, Massachusetts, and I went into this thrift store, and I was talking with this guy, and he was a really nice guy, and we were going back and forth. He says to me, he says, "I have something for you." He goes to the the back of his counter, and he pulls out an Elvis. I have a first edition Elvis Presley, like his first album.
okay,
He
that's
pulls
so cool.
he pulls it out and he's like, "You want this?" And I'm like standing. I don't even know how to respond. You know how rare to see something like that in front of your eyes. And he's like, "Yeah, my brother had it, for years and whatever." And he's like, "I'll give it to you for $100." I have a $980 vinyl record for $100
Yeah,
in my vinyl
that's so
collection.
cool.
And that just speaks to testament. It's not about like, trends or whatever. That music connection right there where you can have a record or something that like means something and is physical and has an actual story behind it. You make stories as you collect them.
Yeah.
That's what I love the most about them.
Well, yeah, and like in inheriting this big collection of records,
Yeah.
part of that was I kept there was a black box that was hidden in a closet at my uncle's place, and he was an artist. He was a visual artist. I have his like art actually hanging on my walls too. It's the only art that's in this room pretty much are all things that he made. So I have those, but I kept this black box that I found in a closet that was there, and he was connected to a lot of Milwaukee bands back in the day. So weirdly, The thing that I ended up really getting into was the thing that he was super into too, and knew all those people. Same as my dad used to hang out with a band, like one particular band in Milwaukee, and so I kept their records. Like I went through this black box, and it was all Milwaukee bands that he had that were friends of his, that gave them their records. He collected their stuff. Um, Fortunately, there
Weird.
are some pretty valuable things in there too. Like there
Weird
was
that is.
the band Die
Some
Kreuzen, which is like a hardcore, icon band. I have the
it's like
first
the holy
pressing of their
grail.
I have the first pressing of their 45, of their 7-inch.
Oh my
A band called the
gosh.
Haskells in Milwaukee. I have some records from them, and like old punk records from Milwaukee, because that was what he was into. So,
That's crazy. Like
and that's in the never
just
sell box. That's the never sell box is right there, So
you
all of
can't
it.
really you can't really buy them. That's the craziest part is right like your uncle being able to walk into a record shop in the 1970s and being able to just go through like local vinyl records of probably some of these artists maybe made
Mhm.
100, maybe 200.
Yeah.
It, like there's no words. There's no
Yeah.
words of how rare and valuable that is.
Right.
Just on a
And
music standpoint.
yeah, and some of them were just handed to him by bands, I'm sure. Like it was people that he knew, or somebody that knew somebody, and or he was at a club and said, "Hey, I'll buy your record while you're here." It is also very wild to see, like, there are some price stickers on some of these from like 70s record shops that are, they bought this record for $1, right? Or $2 back then. And now it's something that is worth much more than that. So,
Yeah, like $500. It's like you put
yeah,
a few
yeah.
more zeros next to that
Yeah. So,
one.
yeah.
Listen, Alan, I want to tell you, man. Like, I really, seriously, I really appreciate conversations like this because we really get into the raw and gritty of what it means to be artists, especially like going through the phase, the story, the life, and like all the changes and things coming around, and like being able to have that passion and even having past generations be able to pass those things over I think is absolutely incredible. And I think like that really does. It shapes you as a person. It really like allows you to keep pushing forward and being able to not only just represent your hometown, but really be able to represent real genuine artists that
Hmm.
do deserve a chance. That
Yeah. Yeah. That's what
deserve
it's
a little
all about.
spotlight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, well, I thank you for having me on, and, letting me kind of tell my story too, and talk about my little part of the world, right? Like that,
Yeah.
it takes podcasts like that to also, like yours, to help get that story out to people. So thank you for doing this too, and having me on.
Oh, my pleasure, my man. And for anybody out there, you have an incredible website. You've got just tons of everything. You have like your artists, you got posts, you've got venue information. You want to break that down, like regarding your podcast, your radio show, where like everybody can find your stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. So the website is breakingandentering.net. There is a Milwaukee section that's heavy. That's, our main focus, but there is an everywhere else section too, where we cover good
Hmm.
stuff from around, just independent music in general. My radio show is Friday nights. You can hear it on FM 1021 in Milwaukee, but they have a web player. You can listen in, whatever 9 o'clock Central is your time on Friday nights. I also host a podcast called Hustling Sideways, where we talk about having a job and a side hustle, because that's what this was for a very long time for me too. And yeah, at Allen Halas is the best place to find everything, because I'm sharing links and posts all the time, because that's what we have to do in this world now, is put all that stuff out there. So
Oh my god! And you are preaching to the choir, man. The amount of times I've get people that come on, and I'm like trying to, because I primarily just do like Instagram promotions when episodes are coming out.
mhm.
Just trying to be able to tag, and it's like, okay, they don't use them. Okay, so then I gotta go
Yeah,
back into Podmatch, then I gotta go on Google, and then I gotta do a little bit of searching, and then I find.
yeah,
Keep it simple, keep it easy. It's Allen House. Everywhere on social media, you know where the website is. Links and everything's below. Beautiful. Makes
yep,
everybody's life easy.
yes,
Love it.
yeah. So
Well,
cool, cool.
thank you again, man. And to anybody out there, if you want to check out more of the podcast, you can find us across pod everywhere. So, that